Hello and welcome to the Patty Pod, Season 3, Episode 1. We are coming to you from Prospect Park in Brooklyn. It's a sunny day. It is August 21st. I essentially have the day off. Did a little bit of responding to some email this morning, but the school year has not started yet for us teachers. So I have a little bit of time here to kind of get prepared and ready before the official school year starts. I'm going to a new school. The last I spoke to you all on this podcast, I think I had announced that my school was closing, and I was not. I had not yet got a new position, but in the meantime, I interviewed at a number of different schools in the spring, and found one actually in June after our school year had ended. So it was a roller coaster experience. I kind of got my hopes up and hopes down from various different schools. I didn't apply to that many. I was being somewhat picky and trusting my intuition. And it worked out, so I was really gratified that it worked out. It was gratifying that I was sort of following my intuition, and that helped me make my choices rather than just trying to kind of blitzkrieg the job market and take whatever came my way. So I was really grateful for that. In the interim, I was back in Minnesota for a little bit, and then back to New York and Brooklyn, and then Kate and I went to Japan for 3.5 weeks, which was quite the trip for us. It was the first time we'd been on vacation that long since our honeymoon. And the honeymoon was about 2 weeks, so this was even longer than that. It was really spectacular, actually. Part of it was, I think, just being on a vacation for that long. Part of it was Kate's really excellent planning. She did a really, really wonderful job planning out each day, and we were able to go to a lot of different parts of the country. We didn't get up to Hokkaido, the most northerly island, but we made our way up to a town called Niigata, is how they said it, and the Japanese said it, on the northeast coast, and from there took a ferry to an island off of the coast called Sato Island, and then we came back down to the mainland to a few different towns. One of them was Kanazawa, which was near another town called Shirakawa-go, which was a little medieval town. And then we went into Kyoto, and it was Kanazawa was the town that we came back to. I always get these towns confused because some of them sound similar. If I didn't say that right before. Kanazawa, then this town, Shirakawa-go, which was this little feudal-era town that was really well preserved. And then down to Kyoto, quick trip to Osaka, and then down to Hiroshima, Fukuoka, and then a few other towns in the southern part of Kyushu Island. And then finally we made our way to, I gotta look it up now because I'm gonna butcher the name again. We went to Kagoshima. Kagoshima is a beautiful town in the southern island of Kyushu, where you have views of a volcano. And then from there we flew up and back to Tokyo. So it was quite the trip. I'm going to talk a little bit about the trip, I think, for the first few episodes of this season. I'll start with when we landed in Tokyo. I posted a lot about our trip I'm going to kind of use those as a guide. We landed in Tokyo, and we'd been traveling for something like 24 hours straight, so I was totally exhausted and couldn't really keep my eyes open on the airport bus coming in. And then we slept pretty well that night when we got in. And then we woke up the next day, and I kind of really got the first chance to see it. And it was pretty spectacular. I looked out the window and I saw this roadway that was a floor or a story or two up in the air. It was just right outside our window, and beneath it were all these shops, these buildings. And the roadway was like, I don't know, on the top of the second floor. And I couldn't quite believe that they had essentially a road on top of buildings. And then I looked around the neighborhood that we were staying in. We were staying in the neighborhood of Ginza, which is kind of like the Upper East Side or Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, if you know that area, kind of upscale shopping. And there are some offices and some residences and hotels. And but right in this really main part of town, in the center part of the city, they had trains, the bullet train running through on an elevated platform right through the, in between the buildings. And everything was so vertical, high rise after high rise after high rise, big advertisements on the sides of the buildings, a number of, neon lights and electric lights, and just immediately it reminded me of some kind of futuristic movie, and it was quite spectacular. I loved it. I was just in the mood for it. I was ready for it. Kate had done such a good job planning. I, didn't feel like we were confused or overwhelmed or anything, and it was smooth getting into the hotel. We had heard a lot about how service oriented they are in the in the jobs that are sort of public facing, service oriented. And when we first got there, the guys that were loading our bags onto the buses, the airport buses, weren't the most helpful. So I kind of thought, oh, maybe this is a little bit kind of overemphasized or overrated. But then when we got to the hotel, I could see this in action, and the clerk, was very. They were all the people working behind the desk were quite friendly, saying hello and bowing, over and over again, and they, big smiles. And the clerk, they checked us in, and then they walked us over to the elevator, and the clerk, made sure that we understood how to hold the key card in front of the reader before we pushed the button. So I'd never had that happen, and I was like, oh, okay, this is what they're talking about. And that pretty much held true throughout the whole trip. Whenever you were dealing with a server or somebody at the hotel, or even somebody in the train station, like in the subway station at the window, they were always extremely helpful and respectful, almost deferential to the customer or to the client. So that part was accurate. But again, I was just I talked about the layers of urbanity was the phrase I used in my post, and that's what it felt like. You would go into a subway station, and it would be maybe a mile long, much, much bigger than the subway stations in New York City. And it wouldn't just be a subway station. There would be a shopping center attached, and that would be, I don't know, 2 or 3 stories, below ground, and maybe 2 or 3 stories above ground. And it just seemed like it was sort of endless. You could spend your entire life inside the hallways that made up the shopping centers and train stations, and where one started and the other end, it was hard to tell, and it just would go on and on and on. And we were lucky that Google Maps has been so informative. They've done a great job building it out. It told you exactly what entrance to go and what exit to take when you were leaving, which was important because these stations were just massive. The other thing I was really taken by right away was how clean and just kind of beautiful everything was. The trains looked like they were all brand new. Everything was gleaming on the trains. The windows, the walls, the ceilings, the metal pipes where you would hang on, where the straps hung from, and the seats. Many of these trains had upholstered seating, which really shocked me and Kate. we're used to New York and other American cities, and I guess maybe European cities where, they have hard plastic seats that I'm sure are easy to clean, and still can, you'll see them dirty, and they had upholstered seats here in Japan on many trains. It looked as if it was brand new upholstery. There wasn't any marks or, stains or anything. It looked like it had been just recently vacuumed or something. And that was true for every single train we took. And we were in, I think, 10 different cities. And that included, not just the bullet train where you might expect that because of the high-speed trains that are a little more expensive and, go between cities. But this was true even of all the subway cars that we were on. We also noticed that people were very quiet, almost silent, virtually silent on these trains, which was another shock. The trains in New York certainly can be loud. Things in New York since COVID on the trains have been worse for sure. With loud, unfortunately we have people that are mentally ill that can be yelling, or just somebody playing their music really loud, or somebody rapping really loud, or talking to their friend really loudly. And in Japan it was completely silent, which I liked. I mean, when you're in the mood for silence, it's great, and it's just quiet and peaceful. There's times where I kind of felt like I was not, expressing myself enough, and was feeling too constrained. I couldn't, even have just sort of a normal conversation with Kate. But I don't know, as a change of pace, it was nice, and especially since the subways in New York have been more difficult since COVID. I think I was kind of ready for it. But those are some of the things that jumped out at me right away. We got really kind of active right when we got to Japan. Right when we got to Tokyo, we went to the Meiji Jingu Shrine, I think on our first full day, which was, it's an ancient Shinto shrine. Well, actually, I don't know how ancient it is. I think it was built maybe in the 19th century. I think it honored the emperor of the 19th century. But in any case, fairly old and beautiful. It's in this large wooded park, which is a respite from the busy, bustling streets and shops of Tokyo. And you can go in there and you can really get kind of separated from the city and get deep into the woods where you don't really see any of the buildings or streets or people around you. The shrine grounds are beautiful. These, beautiful wood structures. They have this kind of, I don't know how you would describe the architecture, but it's sort of classic 19th century or feudal era shrine buildings with some of the kind of curved, elongated fronts and sort of the sloping down ceilings. They had these beautiful two trees that were considered divine by the Shinto religion, and people had a place to tie little paper prayers onto sort of a fencing near the tree. And then there was another tree that actually it looked like one tree, but it was two, and they're kind of like, if you look, you can see the branches are the leaf tips are really close together and almost interlocking in a puzzle-like pattern, in this kind of curving, undulating puzzle-like way, which is they thought that there was some placard that said that these were like a couple, that these two trees were a couple. They're kind of represented blessings in marriage if you were to ask for blessings for marriage or for love. So that was a beautiful little scene, and we sat there. It was super, super hot when we got there. Not just the temperature, but the humidity was really high. And that kind of added to the surreality of the whole thing for me. It was, of course, the language was in, the street signs and all the signs on the subway and, menus and whatnot was all primarily in Japanese. And there was a good amount of English as well, but not like you would see in a European country, and obviously not like you'd see in an English-speaking country. So seeing things in Japanese and seeing, being a part of this this layered urbanity that I spoke about. It was such a surreal experience. It really felt like you were kind of in the future, and then to be there with this heat was also just sort of added to the surreality. It was so hot. It honestly felt like a sauna. I was sweating so much that my shirt looked like it does when I go jogging in the summer. Some days, like, the entire front of my shirt was covered in sweat, and a lot of my back too, which maybe looked a little funny, but I had no choice. I just had to accept it and go with it. And so in any case, when we were there, we were just sweating buckets and, meandering through Tokyo and trying to figure out the subway. Able to do that pretty well. They number the stops, which help. There is English too. They give the English name, not just with the I think it's kanji characters, the Japanese characters. So that helps a lot. But we were navigating our way through, kind of trying to figure it out, and figuring it out for the most part. But feeling pretty hot and sweaty, and then we come to this beautiful park where there's this shrine, the Meiji Jingu Shrine, and we're sitting there we're walking around, all of a sudden, we hear thunder, and we look up, and there's storms rolling in, and it was great because we got under these kind of deep eaves, and we just found a place to sit on a bench and just let the rain come, and it took away some of the humidity and cooled things off a bit. So that was a great start. We also went to a museum. I think this was the first or second day. We went to a museum that was called Team Labs Borderless. I'll get into that a little bit, I think, in the next podcast, the next episode. I guess I'll try to stay a little bit more in order, or I'm going to get all mixed up and I'll start repeating myself. So after the Meiji Jingu Shrine, we were near the Harajuku station, which I finally put together. The Belle and Sebastian were singing about that after I went to that neighborhood, which was a surprise because I haven't listened to this song in a long time. It's from I'm a Cuckoo, and it goes, I'd rather be in Tokyo, I'd rather listen to Thin Lizzy, watch the Sunday Gang in Harajuku, something wrong with me, I'm a cuckoo. So I was like, finally put that together. And they were talking about Harajuku, the neighborhood, which was kind of famous basically for this like Tokyo street fashion. There's all these different names for it. Something like there was like the suffix kai, I think it was, K-E-I. And there was like 16 different versions of that. There's also, I think, something they call Lolita style, which is kind of this cutesy, frilly, feminine style. But it's also like a little bit, grown up with short skirts and stockings and high heels and stuff like that. And then there's also something called kawaii, which is more colorful. I think it means cutesy, literally, something like that. Where you see more of the kind of rainbow colors, like really, really intense color. But yeah, I'm not... certainly not super schooled on all the different sub-variants of it, but I think especially back in the first decade and maybe second decade of the 21st century, the 2000s and the 2010s, it was more of a center, Harajuku, of all this fashion, where you'd see young Japanese people really dressing up in all these different styles, and there was a lot of different versions. Some of it was more punky, some of it was more like hip-hop, some of it was more athletic, some of it was more baby doll. Like, there was just a kind of a wide variety, but, really pronounced styles. This wasn't sort of just something casual. Like, these people definitely stood out in these different styles, and so we went to that neighborhood. There's a famous street called Takashita Street. It seems like it's become pretty touristy now. Maybe not really the center of that culture, that kind of fashion culture anymore, but I think some of that general area still is. So we walked around and saw some of it. We went to a neighborhood called Shibuya as well and saw more of that later on, but I'll get to that a little bit later too. So we did a little bit of Harajuku, and then we made our way over to, I think we went to the Shibuya crossing, which is like the busiest intersection in the world and kind of the famous. You'll see this all the time on, like videos about Japan or travel stories or articles about Japan, and just wanted to see it. We were hitting we knew there a lot of this is like super touristy, major, site, but it's like I kind of would want to see that. I think if I was in New York for the first time ever, I'd want to go to the Statue of Liberty and see the Empire State Building. Just these things that you've seen for a lot of your life, and actually go. For me, I'm the type of traveler that wants to go see those things, even just briefly. So we did that. We hit some sushi place that Katie read about, and then we went to breakfast. That was really kind of a trip. It was either day 1 or day 2. I couldn't handle the Japanese breakfast. It is, it's well done, and if you like it, it's all for you. It's great. Kate ate it a lot. A lot of like sushi and other pieces of fish and curry with rice and other kind of typical Japanese flavors. And I just, for whatever reason, like wasn't ready for it in the morning. So I tried to find a Western breakfast. So we found one near a hotel, and we just thought it was hilarious because you ordered on an iPad, and this little like robot cart thing came out. It had these trays on it, and it was like, making these beepy noises, and it had this little screen on the front, and it was a little computer face. And he just came right to your table and kind of beeped at you, and then you got your food off the trays, and then he smiled and rolled away. So that was like, something out of a sci-fi show or whatever, and that was just another part of Tokyo and Japan that was like, we don't, just so different, fun, futuristic, and we loved it. So that's a little bit about Tokyo, the first day or two, first couple of days. I hope you guys will enjoy my my sort of travel log. Some of you probably saw some of it on my social. If you haven't, go over to my social, you'll see it. But that was just a little tidbit about the trip. So we're back here. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my thoughts I had about the Earth and the world, thinking about those terms, Earth and world. I think about how different Earth is from a world. We have, we talk about worlds, like the world of classical music, or the world of motocross racing, or the world of your friends, and, there's kind of the world of your life. And I think, the difference between the Earth and a world is stark to me, because I think when I think a lot of other people try to think of everything, or maybe the meaning of everything, I think about the physical Earth, or maybe the physical universe, and the atoms and the particles that comprise all these things. I know other people think this way. I remember hearing some of my students talk like that, and having, especially like people that are more science, kind of science focused, talk about, well, the universe is all that is. And in any case, I think this is why something physical is often used as an example. Like in philosophy, people would often use an example of a chair. It would be less common to hear about things like a milieu used as an example when somebody's trying to make a point, at least when I was studying philosophy. I mean, certainly those things are discussed. But it's, and in my own mind, I would always, when I would try to describe some kind of point or principle, I would often use something physical like a chair. But to me, I think the meaning or meanings of everything are encountered much more frequently in worlds. That's been my experience. This world of hockey, the world of education, the world of Brooklyn or whatever. And it's just this kind of train of thought reminded me of a little artwork that's embedded in the sidewalk by the main branch of the New York Public Library in Midtown Manhattan. And it's kind of a plaque. It's got a little artwork, and it says, "The universe is made of stories, not of atoms." And that's a quote by a poet named Muriel Rukeyser. And I saw that. It just really struck me the first time I saw that. And I, don't necessarily need to oppose the two. I try to look at things from both sides, the scientific side and sort of maybe a literary side. But, I know it was an interesting point, because so many people's minds go to atoms when they think about the universe. And I like this idea, and it got me thinking about how it's sort of miraculous to me that this earth, when I see it in my mind from a distance, that it can contain all these worlds. It reminds me of scenes from movies where an aircraft is approaching a planet, and it's just a sphere in the distance, and it's just an object when they're in space. And then somehow, as they're descending, and as they get on the ground, it's somewhere in that time, that planet becomes a world where they have a setting, and there's characters and situations and danger and excitement and boredom and anger and beauty, love. And I think Earth is really, that makes me think that Earth is really is a stage, as Shakespeare said, or a set for us in life. And, I think we're meant to live these stories, even if you take kind of a more Eastern approach that sees and recognizes, this is all a play, it's just a play, like don't take things too seriously. But I also think that's where kind of all of the importance is that you're in these stories, and these stories really matter, and you're going to learn from these stories, and you're going to, just experiencing them, all of the drama in our lives is, the drama of our lives, maybe. Like there's something important in being the character in that story. Speaking of life as a play, part of me wants to point out the benefits of seeing life as a play, like I was just mentioning. There can be that benefit. It's been helpful for me, I know, to have the stakes lowered that way. But again, another part of me wants to make a point about the importance of not detaching too much by seeing life this way. And some of this is about pain, I think. There's part of me that sees the importance of going into the pain and engaging with life. I mean, I guess it's just, I don't mean to say in any way that you should exacerbate the pain or glamorize the pain. That doesn't work for me. But I think facing whatever I think is going to be painful, and I'm dealing with this now somewhat because I'm starting a new job and it's going to be all new, and change can be hard, and I'm not just there's going to be a bunch of things I'm going to have to think through and solve and all that. But it's so much better to do that than to try to shy away from it or to worry about it too much before it happens. When I do it though, I try to kind of glide my way through it. I think of a surfer riding a wave. They're moving their bodies actively, but they're also following a wave. They're just riding a wave. They got to adjust. They have to dip and turn and, lean, I'm sure, but they're also riding a wave. And so I got to trust that I can ride the wave, but also have that kind of mindset. So when I engage and I go through the pain, I always come out the other side when it lessens, and that can help me fear the pain less, for sure. And part of why I fear the pain less is because I've learned how to accept the circumstances that led to that pain. I can accept them a bit more. I've learned to accept that my work will be imperfect more, and I've learned to accept that I'm going to get criticism from others. I've been able to accept that more. And, I just read a book by Kara Goucher. She was an Olympian runner who actually grew up in my neighborhood in Duluth. And she talked about when she spoke out against certain, some really unfortunate circumstances at this running program that she was involved in that was sponsored by Nike. Some terrible things. But she spoke up and she got criticism from it, and she said at one point, like, she started getting emails or, social media messages, and she was like, like, it wasn't pleasant, but she thought, okay, I can handle this. And I love that moment. I've had some moments like that before where this thing that I was afraid of happened, and it wasn't pleasant, but I kind of recognized that I could handle it, and then it became a lot less scary, and it was energizing for me. That's, I think, a big part of life, is to have those experiences, because it's a courageous thing for us to do life, and I think we do grow from it. Even if you're in a downtime right now, there's going to be a time where it lessens, and you'll get something out of it. If nothing else, you'll get that you could do it and that you can get through it. So it's a really important thing for me to remember and learn, and I was glad I read that. I found myself doing the deep voice. It kind of reminds me of Duluth Trading Company, if you guys have seen those ads. I do it when I'm slightly annoyed, sometimes involuntarily. A little while back, I was looking for chords, and I kept getting these weird layouts. I think they were, I forget what they're called, charts or something. They weren't just the chords. And and it happened the second time. I involuntarily blurted out, "Same shit." And as if in response to someone trying to tell me that they were useful, if I just took the time to learn them, I muttered out to myself, "I don't give a good damn if they are." So, I don't know where that voice comes from. It reminds me of I guess some men that were like dads and my friends' dads or coaches or whatever, growing up in Duluth. Just have that voice, and I get into it, I guess, when I get annoyed. I saw some prom pictures on Facebook a little while back. This is back during prom season. All the girls had the same kind of flouncy dresses on, and the boys were basically all in the same version of a shirt and tie. But one young buck had a leather jacket on in one of these pictures I saw, and I just thought, this guy does not play by the rules. This guy, he doesn't do it. I want to talk a little bit about any social occupations. I think that the term social science is inept, actually. We talk about the social sciences, there's a number of them. And I understand the use of statistics and double-blind studies lends a feeling of objectivity and hence a feeling of science to these disciplines. And I think there's real knowledge that can come out of these disciplines. I think about things like, sociology or anthropology or even economics. But I just don't think they're sciences, and I think it's kind of misleading to call them sciences because, I think you got to think about what phenomena are being studied. When you're dealing with chemistry or physics or biology, you have quote unquote simple phenomena. I mean, certainly not simple, but comparatively, somewhat predictable. Rocks behave in a certain way. Cells in a leaf usually behave in a certain way. Of course, if you really get deep into physics, if you go and start looking at quantum mechanics, you'll see just how complicated and magical these things are. But, I think these phenomena are more amenable to the scientific method. This is not something new. I learned a lot about this in a philosophy of science class that I took that really questioned, especially whether or not economics was a science. And I think if you think about, what you're studying, human beings are not predictable in a way that a rock is. And I don't think that we shouldn't study human beings. I certainly think we should. But there's a sort of scientism that takes place where we try to shoehorn the study of humans and societies into the scientific procedures or into the scientific method. And it's actually, I think, harmful because, there's sometimes an air of certainty from these studies that really isn't there. And sometimes it's just not the most useful way to study. So just a little bit about social studies. I think it's more of an art than a science. And I try to keep that in mind when I practice my career. I got a new corner called Off-Brand. I think I maybe have brought some of this up in earlier seasons, but I feel like I go off-brand a lot. I think I put up this image of me being like a spiritual guy and kind of a Brooklyn guy, like, in some ways culturally, like I'm sort of like a progressive or hipster culture. I don't like those terms so much. Progressive seems a little too political. Hipster seems a little worn out. But, I understand who I am. And I think I kind of give that image off sometimes. But then I think about things like, I should be doing. I don't have any living plants in my home, which I think is like really off-brand for me. Like that's, I'm supposed to be, I don't know, it seems both kind of like cultured and kind of earthy, and I think I try to be both those things. So no living plants. I'm terrible at keeping plants. I have a brown thumb. I did kill a spider plant, which is notable because those things can survive, I think, in a post-apocalyptic landscape. Sub corner, the off-brand sub corner that I have is going to be called Sick Burns. I don't know if I'm going to repeat this one, but I shouldn't be celebrating sick burns. I'm always preaching about how, we're all one, which I do believe. But I just think sometimes some are funny. Like I encountered a post or something. It was a while ago from, I think it's Elon Musk's maybe ex-wife now, or ex-girlfriend or something. Apparently he complained about her having too much body hair, and she said, I'm sorry for being a mammal. I was like, thought that was so funny. Like, yeah, bro, are you familiar with mammals? Anyway, sick burns. Maybe I'll keep that in the podcast. Yeah, I was thinking about the language corner. We'll just wrap up with the language corner. I heard a brand use the phrase "the good stuff" in an ad, and it was a reference to cleaning supplies of some type. I think it was specifically referring to Pledge or Windex or something like that. And the person was like, "Hey man, this is the good. No, I got the good stuff." And I was like, this is beyond the pale. No one in human history has ever used the phrase "the good stuff" to refer to wood or window cleaner. No one has ever done that. So I am going to throw the flag there. I won't allow it. I should figure out who made that ad and start a hashtag campaign against it. All right, well, that's it for episode 1. Really glad to be back doing this. I hope everyone out there is doing well. I hope that those of you who are listening will connect with me, and I love that, and I hope our paths cross soon. Hope everyone's well. Peace and love.